Hello. It's episode 107 of the Just Kidding podcast. Today we're covering two main roster characters and two brand new test roster characters. Let's take a look. This one's by Just Kidding. This one's by Just Kidding. That one's by Just Kidding. And the last one is also by Just Kidding. So all of them, they're just kidding. He's just kidding. You're just kidding. I'm just kidding. Are there any other Just Kiddings I should know about?
Meow.
I'm out of here. Good night, everybody.
And
now that bit's out of the way.
That's the podcast episode.
Shut up. Now that bit's out of the way, welcome to episode 107 of the Strip Poker Night at the Inventory Podcast. I'm your host, SPNanon, also known as Just Kidding. With me is my co-host, Nord, who I told to shut up. Also, Just Kidding. And then the real Just Kidding, our guest, Just Kidding.
Hi, everybody.
Please reintroduce yourself.
I'm just kidding. Or Fence.
Well, then I guess we can move on.
Or any other names that you know me by. Happy to be here. Thrilled, even.
Well, we're going to talk about your stuff, as you may have gathered by the intro. But is there any unique stuff you want to say about yourself or that you're working on? Or have worked on for this game?
These aren't even all of the characters that were added to the roster by me, technically, recently. There's also Gene in the Masquerade. That happened as well.
Didn't write, didn't count.
This isn't even the full depth of my work. Also, I gave Velvet a complete update, and I gave Bean a new boobs. I've been busy boy.
Didn't write, didn't count, but we do appreciate your efforts and contributions in all regards.
I'm here to serve my dark, sinister overlords.
You two, you're both such goody little two-shoes, aren't you? Just donating models and helping people and generally being in good spirits and just contributing in more ways than just your own little waifus. How do you feel about all that?
It gives me a warm, fuzzy sense of accomplishment.
Makes me sick. Yeah, so if you're not aware, among Just Kidding's many talents and a reputation he's built up for himself at this point is not just a wide spread of character contributions, but specifically his double-sided conveyor belt of personally developed characters. Last time he was on, he's a pretty regular podcast host. We enjoy having him on, and there's a lot of shit that he made that we can talk about, even when he's not here. I think it may have been like episode 91 you were on last time, and back then we were talking about two main roster characters that you made and two testing roster characters that you made, and that's sort of a habit you've gotten into. Everyone knows that as soon as Just Kidding's two testing roster characters graduate to main, he already has two more ready to go to replace them on testing, and so the cycle continues. He's just been developing them completely in secret. We never know who they are until they drop, but we know that he's definitely working on them, and it will be quite a surprise when he's finally run dry. We're going to talk about all of them today, but of course, following that trend, the two main roster characters, Leviathan and Nephenee, they were the testing roster characters back in 91. But more on that later. Nord, would you also like to say hi?
Hello. Wait, no, that wasn't hi. Shit. Hello, business as usual for me. Just kidding. I'm surprised that in addition to everything you can do, like just the sheer consistent pace that you managed to keep, having two characters ready to go to main, and then immediately, like within the hour of us putting a character onto main, you're like, okay, here's the next one. We send out the post, you put in new post.
He's got it all coordinated and ready to go, even with subreddit posts. It includes everybody.
And not only that, but you manage to consistently update all of your characters as well, to the point where we've outright given you permission to push merge requests to GitHub just so that you don't have to update 10 plus characters every time individually.
You gotta say, that has been a godsend now that I figured out how that works. It's a thing of beauty. I love it.
Really? I think that makes you the second person ever who's not a mod and yet has that privilege. The first was me back in like 2018, 2019, for frequency of updates. So congrats. You managed to be consistent and productive enough to be granted that. How do you feel?
It gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling of accomplishment.
All right then. Well, we're pretty much gonna get into it. Things have been pretty much the same for me. There are some, we're a bit behind. There are some goings on in the game in general that we will cover in the next episode. But for now, we figured, hey, just kidding. He's got his merge request privileges, or just merging privileges, and he's got these blocks of 4 characters all to himself. Why not just give him yet another episode to himself? This may become a regular thing as long as he keeps putting stuff out like this. Why not? And why muddy the waters with anything else? So for each of these, we will give you a chance to speak your thoughts on the project, how it went or how it's going. In the case of the testing roster characters, everything that motivated them and why. And then Nord will give his thoughts and I will give mine. So let's make this relatively quick. But first up, we have the 2 that have graduated to the main roster. I think it was late last year it finally happened. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
We have Fairy Leviathan first up. A Reploid from Mega Man Zero. I'd waited so long for a realistic robot girl, but is always what I fantasized about. I think she would have been a really interesting writing premise in SPNatI in terms of exploring, technically human in most regards, but also like a super fighting robot. What's the deal with sexuality there? I think you grabbed that premise and explored it pretty effectively. She's quite conceited. I went through the general premise of her character more in depth when she joined the testing roster. It's because I've actually played Mega Man Zero, so I know a little bit more about it. But yeah, she's very conceited. She's considers herself a protector of humanity, but she's mostly in the oceans. She's a water and ice themed boss character, but she is an antagonist because she also kills other innocent Reploids who didn't kill any humans. It's not a very fun setting, and but she is a pretty fun character. So now that look, she's one of I guess several characters now that got a Toblerone. I don't know if she can eat. I think I questioned that. But yeah, I mean, how did this project go? And since we covered her on the testing side of things, what's changed? How has your approach to her evolved? And what do you think of the place she's in right now on the roster?
I think since last we talked about her, I think the name of the game has just been more of what was already there. People seem to enjoy her attitude, and SPNatI needs more mean girls, so she definitely fills that niche. Definitely a lot more, conversations about, why is there a Reploid here and what does that mean? And she does eat a little bit of Toblerone, and they do talk about that a little. The caloric density of an energy crystal must be pretty intense, so I imagine chocolates, it's no big deal for her. But yeah, I'm really happy with how she turned out, and I've gotten, pretty much rave reviews all around, which is, encouraging. And it's there was never any point where it felt like I needed to redirect or change how she was doing things. I think the big things are that she's now kind of more aware of when someone's not a human or when someone else is a robot. Kind of covering the tracks there to make sure that she doesn't make fun of you for being a human if you're not. And going forward, I just want her to have more meaningful conversations with people about how they suck, and she's really cool.
Do you have any other plans for her going forward?
Nothing specific at the moment in the works. I do have some probably way farther down the line things earmarked. There was a possibility that she was going to get a Christmas costume, but I got too busy and that kind of fell through. So that's tabled for maybe this year in the winter or whenever I decide to get it done. But I did make most of it, but there was a bit of a technical thing that prevented me from finishing on time. But I'm sure once I'm wiser and stronger, I will be able to, fix that and get that out there for her so that y'all can remember her come Christmas time.
I feel like she could just surround herself with ice crystals.
X-Dive gave her actually gave her two alts, but one of them was a Christmas-themed alt, which seems on the outset strange, like why? But when you think like, oh, because she's ice and Christmas is the cold holiday, so that's the through line. That's why they did it, I imagine. At least that's the only reason I can come up with. But look forward to that because I'm definitely going to finish that up. That is what I do. I finish things I start. I did start that, but I forget what was going on exactly during that time. But I got caught up in something else and wasn't able to finish it.
Hey man, a lot of people don't finish what they start. Her helmet looks a bit like Proto Man there.
Because it's red?
Yes.
That tracks.
What was your favorite thing about working on her? What's like an interaction or something that you think came out really nice?
I actually had a lot of fun doing some banter with Darkness. I think Wivy is Darkness's author. A lot of fun stuff with, Leviathan is a protector of humans, but she's also really strong. So Darkness has kind of this fixation of like, you could like really hurt me if you wanted to. And Leviathan being like, yeah, but I don't know if I want to hurt you. But because Darkness is insufferable and has big boobs, Leviathan is like, you know what, maybe I would hurt you. Maybe I would do that. Maybe that would be fun for me. So I think that's still an evolving situation. I don't know if anything like spectacular is going to happen because of it, but it has been fun kind of exploring, like kind of what's her limit on that. Just how much is she going to tolerate from an annoying person before it's like, okay, maybe I would strangle a human being. Maybe I would do that.
No first law of robotics with Reploids.
Apparently not. I mean, Dr. Light screwed that up day one.
She could spawn in like a giant like ice dragon and just have it like gnaw at Darkness.
She could definitely do that. That's like her thing.
Well, anyway.
I was going to suggest ice play.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for cutting in. Is there anything else you want to say about her, or are you just going to let Nord give his thoughts?
Nord should give his thoughts. I want to hear Nord's thoughts.
I was going to suggest ice play. Listen. The main note I wrote down is absolute queen. What do I mean by that? She dominates the table with her personality, knows she's the boss, very much is like, haha, silly humans, I'm so much better than you, look at me. Love it to bits. Noticed a couple of newer things from when I'd last played with her. The animation where she shows off her spear, for example, is really well done. Surprisingly difficult to do flourishes like that in, Kisuke in general, but like with the pose maker. So well done for that. I wanted to just ask you if you'd done a broader art update, or if I'm just deceiving myself, because I feel like she's subtly different. Or has she not changed that drastically?
I don't think there was any major overhaul on Leviathan. I think with how she came in on day one is how she still is. I don't remember having an agenda item like that where I was going through and changing everything for her. So you might just be having a dissociative episode.
I'm going senile. She's really good, I would say. I'm the one here with zero knowledge of Mega Man and its big old cast of characters. So this is really SPNanon's domain, but I feel like I get a decent idea of her deal from just playing with her. And it helps a lot that she's really hot, and so's her personality. You did a good job.
I think, yeah, I mean, lore-wise, I think she covers enough of what she maybe should or has to in generics. And I mean, Just Kidding's pretty good about targeting, so she can always get into more specific stuff in that regard. The setting of Zero is kind of dour, so it's not something you really want to talk about most of the time if you don't have to. Like, yeah, I just go around slaughtering innocent Reploids, and there's one city humans can live in, and they always get nuked. There's an energy crisis. I mean, real life is depressing enough. I don't think we need to get into that.
I think Leviathan benefits from, her feelings about the situation at large are pretty blasé.
Yeah, she's pretty flippant about the whole thing.
When she does talk about it, it's like, it is what it is. So,
Poor little scared humans living in their huts.
My initial impression of her way back when I first played her with her would have been she would be hunting for humans to kill them, but now I very much get it across of no, she knows she's superior to humans and she pities them and goes around killing Reploids in the hopes that it'll help humans somehow. I have a feeling it doesn't.
Well, okay, Reploids are kind of basically responsible for like all death and suffering that humans have endured,
but the humans are responsible for the Reploids, so whose fault is it actually, really?
It's basically like the series before this, X is like, or Mega Man X is basically like, humans and Reploids, they can get along, and like by Zero, a lot of people come to the conclusion it's like, yeah, we just gotta kill all the fucking Reploids. They all gotta go. But of course, they can only have Reploids fight other Reploids.
Yeah, their solution to the Reploid problem is more Reploids.
The genie won't really go back in the bottle, and I mean, Reploids are smart enough to make other Reploids anyway.
Does not go well for humanity.
Yeah, but that's if you want to see the end result of that, we'll talk about Roll Casket again sometime, I'm sure.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Sorry for antagonizing you earlier, Nord, but like Leviathan, I'm very conceited and I don't like being interrupted. So, let's see. I'll talk more about the inter-character targets later. I did play her with Nephenee, and I enjoyed their banter, but I'll talk more about that with Nephenee. So I just have bits of like minor praise here, because I really like Leviathan overall. I don't think either of these two have really changed all that much since we talked about them on testing. Again, it's just a case of them being good in the first place. I did a couple little things I noticed that were nice. When she takes off her helmet, she kind of like fluffs up her hair a little bit on the stripping pose. Gives her a little flair, little humanity even. I kind of like how she's like also vain in like a sexual way, and she has that one little easy weak point that it seems everybody goes for. Jura gets in on it. Nephenee finally gets a shot in her after taking abuse all game because she's got small tits. She's totally flat. I don't know who would be cruel enough to build her that way, but it is what it is. I also noticed the javelin pose where she brings it out and she does a little twirl with it. That is not something I think I saw the first time around. Maybe you added it afterwards. I do think you should edit it in Photoshop or whatever so her fingers actually grip the javelin. And if you want to be really ambitious, you could do her pose where she points it directly at the screen to kind of mimic what she does in her fighting stance in the actual game itself. It's take a lot of foreshortening though.
The first character to just actually stab the player and cause a game over screen.
You collectible puncture wound. Let's
Icy,
see.
watery grave.
No butt. Solitaire post Megamind here. No butt. Does she have a butt pose? I didn't see it.
She does. You were just unlucky.
That should really be a guaranteed thing. Boobs are guaranteed. You can't guarantee the butt.
Worked hard on the butt. So you got to work hard for it too.
It's a criticism that I have of like all the characters here we're going to talk about. Maybe some have butts and some don't, but they should all have them and they should all have a lot of them. They should be guaranteed. Butt boob parity. Especially egregious because, I mean, you've gone on record on the Discord server as saying Leviathan's ass was built for shitting. It's a direct quote.
I didn't say her ass was built for shitting. I said she was built for shitting, just on the whole.
I see. Which is a bit strange. You'd think Reploids wouldn't have to do that. This is not something that the Mega Man series explores.
Really a missed opportunity by Capcom.
Maybe in 12 we'll have Shit Man.
Sewer Man.
Well, we already had, what was it, Pump Man?
Pump Man, yeah, we're almost there. We had Toad Man, we got Pump Man. They both live in the sewer. Shadow Man also lives in the sewer for some reason.
A couple other minor things. Again, this is less like criticisms and more just stuff you could add if you wanted to. I thought her finish, her orgasm, could be a little more dramatic. There's definitely some crazy effects you could go for. It seemed very tame for a Reploid, and for especially her. You could just do the standard with like droplets or something. A lot of the characters, I noticed they didn't have any kind of like droplets or effects when they were finishing. You could get crazy with like ice sparkles or snowflakes or crystals, or even summoning some fuck off ice dragon just for flair. She doesn't have to do anything with it, but just be funny to see it like fly out. That's sort of her big move in the games. It flies out with like a big cry. Or even you could do with a little, when you die in Mega Man and you burst into like 8 lights and they spread out in all directions, you could do those.
That was on a short list of ideas at some point.
I'd recommend any of them. But yeah, I really like her overall, and I think she is captured very well. I think I criticized the model when she first came on testing. And again, it's not because this one's bad, it's just because she could be a little more petite, I think, and kind of tight all over. But it's not like she's unappealing in this current form. It's really just something if you want to retool her way down the line, or maybe if you want to go back and consider any upgrades before diving into any alt costumes.
I do remember you bringing that up. I never did make that a priority. I wasn't sure if... I definitely saw where you're coming from. But I think I like her model as it is well enough, and I haven't really gotten any ones saying that they feel that needed to change. If that feeling is around and people do feel that way, sound off, because I'm definitely, not adverse to changing it even at this point. But how I feel currently is that I'm very satisfied with how it came out, so I don't feel compelled with any immediacy to make any kind of changes to her body like that. But yeah, I'm definitely, open to the idea. So if anyone shares that sentiment with SPNanon here, or a similar sentiment, let me know.
Well, you know what? Fair enough. I know you've got your hands full with other projects now, so the conveyor belt goes. Is there any of you have any final things you want to say about Leviathan before we move on?
I think she's pretty cool.
Icy, even.
What killed the dinosaurs?
The space colony Eurasia dropping on the Earth?
No, the Ice Age.
Okay. Well, yes. Very good character. I like her very much. Glad she's on main now. So let's move on to, I don't know if you intend to have some kind of theming for the pairs of characters that you develop in tandem. These two definitely seem to have one. Semi-retro 2000s Nintendo video game girls with a blue color scheme and a helmet, and they're spear carriers. That seems to be the update. Blue helmet, spear carrier update you had going on here, because the other one is Nephenee from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, right? That's the first game she was on, and then I think she came back in Radiant Dawn. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did most of the characters come back?
Yes, all of them came back.
Okay, because she's a relatively minor unit in the story, right?
She does. You can actually complete the game without ever speaking to her, and you can just leave her behind and let her die in jail.
Well, on that note, why this character? How did development go? And what are your plans for the future? She's very different from Leviathan. She's the complete opposite of conceited. In fact, she's trying to hide the way she normally speaks. Again, we covered this in testing, but she's sort of like she's the country bumpkins in a war bigger than herself. But I'll let you explain.
So back when I was a little boy, I really liked Fire Emblem. I still do, and definitely the Tellius games were my favorite ones. Those are the two you mentioned, the Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. And that's where Nephenee's from. And I always really liked Nephenee. If you were a Fire Emblem nerd in that time period, the first game you played was probably the Fire Emblem. They just called it Fire Emblem for the Game Boy. And up until Path of Radiance, you never got to have a soldier unit, just a plain spear wielding unit, infantry, on your team. So she was very novel, and I was like, I gotta use this lady, and so I did. And there's there's a lot of debate whether or not she's actually a good unit, but I always use Nephenee, and I love Nephenee, and she's super cute, and her whole arc of just a girl from the countryside who got swept up into a conflict that's way bigger than her, and doesn't really even by the end understand what's going on is amusing to me. And she's just she's got the kind of design that really appeals to me, and I felt compelled from the very beginning, from day one of doing SPNatI work, thinking about characters that I would add. Nephenee was definitely on the short list, and I was like, I want to make Nephenee. I want to contribute to the great Fire Emblem overlords. And I made my dream come true, and it's happened, and I did it. So the moral of the story is, follow your dreams, and nothing bad will ever happen.
There are unfortunately no gifs of her on Tenor. This is something you should correct yourself. You should make at least one where she crits a guy and kills him, and then another where she gets crit and dies.
Nephenee is great at critting guys. She has a ability called Wrath, where if her HP is below a certain threshold, her critical hit rate raises a whole bunch, and then she gets a bunch of crits.
I noticed that actually you implemented that into the game. I'm not sure if it's in generic lines, but every so often, if she gets pissed in a target, it's marked Wrath, and her intelligence rises.
It does happen in her generics, and it also happens in all of her targets, where all of it have a variant where she's kind of passive and normal, or one where she gets her hackles up, and that's how you know it's Wrath time. And it does change how her intelligence works. It can only happen during her final two stages, to replicate how that works. And it's just a fun little thing that I thought was cool. And it's one of the most consistent gimmicks that I've implemented. I never forget to add those to her targeted lines. So I've considered that a bit of a success. I didn't stop doing the gimmick. I kept on doing the gimmick, and I will continue using the gimmick. You can quote me on that. I'll never forget.
It's something that might be pretty invisible to the player. You never know how the cards are going to shake out, but it is pretty funny for a dev to see. On the subject of dynamic difficulty, I'll cover that more in depth when we talk about Carmine, actually. But is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to do with her going forward?
Not a whole lot of immediate plans with Nephenee. Definitely, I am a targeting machine, and I want to send out more targets and make more targets and receive more targets, and so on and so forth with all my characters, Nephenee included. I think a lot of us devs have that little bugaboo in the back of our mind. Like, if I was gonna make one of my characters my Maya, who would it be? It would probably be Nephenee for me. Out of all of them, Nephenee would be my Maya, my mountain.
Wow.
So that will, no matter how many characters I make, that probably will not change that answer. So if ever I pare down my empire, I will hold on to Nephenee. So no, and like I said, no immediate specific plans for as far as alt costumes or epilogues go. There is, I've definitely got a few ideas on the back burner, but they're probably not going to come into fruition for a while.
Well, now you got to make those tenor gifts.
I'm busy.
But Nord, what's your take on this whole Nephenee situation?
I like her a lot, but I've got a couple of burning questions to ask here. Just because I'm a Neo Fire Emblem fan. I only started with Awakening and haven't really gone back. I tried Sacred Stones and sucked at it, so I didn't get past like Chapter 3. Nephenee, do Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn have like support conversations? I don't think they do they?
Path of Radiance has support conversations like you probably expect in traditional Fire Emblems. Before Awakening, there was a little less emphasis on them. They were a little harder to get. But in Radiant Dawn, they removed support conversations, and there are none anymore. There's a bit of support lines that they have in there, but nothing like, a whole little vignette for you to watch. They're just little one-off lines that pop up in certain situations, and you can build support levels, but they definitely de-emphasize support in Path of Radiance, or in Radiant Dawn, sorry. And that was the game that almost killed the franchise. But then Awakening really emphasized support conversations, and that game saved the franchise. So you could say they learned from that mistake.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I know from having written Fire Emblem characters that having those support conversations really helps flesh out a character. Whereas, like, normally a Fire Emblem character is like, here's your one personality trait and their one assigned class and starting weapon. And that's all you have to go off of. I see she's also in Heroes as well. So I guess my question for you is...
who isn't a hero point?
So I guess my next question is, how difficult did you find it to actually make her with that in mind?
I mean, she does have she has her moments in definitely Path of Radiance, so there's not like nothing to go on. She interacts with not a whole lot of characters. She actually has like only 3 characters she has support conversations with, but they kind of are all pretty revealing they're all pretty Nephenee focused. She's kind of like, they don't really talk about the other person that much. They really talk about just Nephenee in those conversations. But so there wasn't like nothing to go off of. And at the point I was making her, she'd been in Heroes and gotten at least one alt. So there's definitely not nothing to work with. There was definitely stuff to work with, and this was before the age of really flanderized Fire Emblem characters. So there was a bit more. If she was around today, I think the whole talking with an accent thing would be almost all encompassing. Notes of other self-esteem issues she has going on. So yeah, definitely I feel there's once you gather all the bits and pieces together, you definitely have a fully fleshed out. You have a pretty fleshed out character on your hands.
Yeah. I think you did a really good job with what you had to work with. A bizarre thing that stuck out to me is that this is the first time I've seen like the countryism "ifin" actually written down somewhere. She has the sort of like rural dialect all throughout her speech, and it's consistent. It's well done. It's one of those things that helps sell her a lot. I probably made this point before, but it was absolutely the correct choice to have her keep the helmet on for as long as possible, but having her actually take it off and show her messy hair is great. Leads to the rare pose, I believe. Yeah.
It helps her stand out visually.
Yeah.
And it also communicates something about the character that she identifies so strongly with it.
Yeah, exactly. Just very cute all throughout the game. Her banter with Leviathan is very fun. eventually like standing her ground against the Reploid, and well, in the test game I did, she did lose to Leviathan, but that's besides the point.
I won all 3 of my test games. Skill issue.
I
It
definitely
does kind
think
of fall flat for like a really conceited character when they end up just winning. It doesn't feel very narratively satisfying.
I'm gonna say it was a good choice to listen to the sponsorship feedback you got to add the honestly a bit strangely placed garters on her legs, because they do help emphasize her thighs, which is a big part of her like official art. So that was worth the effort.
You can thank, if I may, for that little one.
But yeah, I unfortunately don't have much else to say, just I liked her a lot. Do you see yourself giving Nephenee costumes in the future? I haven't seen what they look like in Heroes.
I definitely can see that in the future. I think she has 2 alt provided by Heroes, or 3 if you count her. The one where they dress them up like a Heroes country. Oh god, I haven't played Heroes in like a solid 2 years, so all the terms are lost on me. But I know she has.
Do they all have helmets?
One doesn't have a helmet technically, but it's probably the hardest one. It would be the hardest one to justify putting in SPNatI, because it doesn't have a good fit for an event, and that's the kind of the kimono one, where instead of a helmet she has like a mask she wears. But she has the alt where, and this one's also kind of hard to justify putting in SPNatI because there's no good event for it. Where all it is like she's wearing a dress for dancing. It's the dancey event. The Firewall has a dancing event for whatever reason, but she wears a dress, but she's also wearing a helmet at the same time.
Okay, well, I'll give my pretty simple thoughts while you're doing that. There's not too much for me to criticize. I quite like her. I always have. I've enjoyed targeting her. I've enjoyed playing with her. She is she's cute. She's kind of like she represents like the farmer's daughter pretty well. She's like plain pretty. Like she's pretty, but it kind of like an unrefined way, you know, or like her hair is all tousled and that kind of thing. And she looks kind of uncomfortable in her own skin. But at the same time, you know, it's very charming how she steadily lets more of her real self come out. I love when she gets excited and really earnest and kind of starts rambling. I think that's even like what her pose is called, is like rambling. She gets excited about things like mud, describing them to Leviathan. Very striking to me was that she said, if I had a dick, I'd bend you over and give you what for? To Maya. It's like, oh my god, that really came out of nowhere. But it was charming. Very late, you know, even during like forfeit stuff, she just seemed very confident, which was a nice change of pace. You know, it was cool to see her go that far, and she was just not like super flirty, but like she very clearly like she kind of knew what she wanted, and she leaned into it. Her accent and her affectations and her outlook on life was very clear. And it played into what appealed to her. No butt, Megamind, question mark. Apparently she does have a butt. Again, I didn't see it. I don't know why you feel the need to roll the dice on this. There's enough luck in the game already.
Hiding it from you specifically.
I guess so. It's just a real shame. I mean, I know she's not built for shitting the way Leviathan is, but she's probably shoveled a lot of shit.
You don't live in the country without shoveling some shit. I've shoveled shit.
I'll say now, I played these two together by themselves because I didn't want them to interfere with Carmine and Aoi, because I knew that all your characters kind of talk to each other. And that's something I do want to take time to praise you for, is your great dedication to inter-character chatter. That is to say, characters you've made. A lot of people who've made a bunch of characters, they don't bother going super in-depth with targeted lines to each other. I don't know if people find it kind of masturbatory or incestuous or something, or feel like they can't get into it, or they just don't enjoy that process. But you have always, in every, the vast majority, or like of like your updates, or like the biggest chunks of each of them are just lines to each other, and you update all your characters at once pretty much, and so much of that is them talking to each other. I don't know how many characters you're up to, like full characters that you write for, but it's got to be, I think I crunched the numbers, it's got to be like 78 full conversations you would have to write between all of them, all the different pairs. Not easy. I don't know how much of the way you're through that, but it only gets like exponentially worse as you keep adding more on this conveyor belt of death.
And now you have to add specific variants depending which order they're placed in.
So, I will, as far as like criticisms go, sometimes it doesn't really feel like the same person writing for both of them. It's more like just sort of like a general trend overall, because you're writing so much dialogue, and it is for both characters. I think in general, from what I've seen, perusing your characters and testing them together, the targets that they have with each other do a very good job of getting their shtick across, which is nice. If you haven't played them and seen their generic lines, it's nice to know what their general attitude is. However, I do think equally, if you want to, it's something that I try to do often, if you could try to explore, actually like explore the characters a little bit more by the ending of those conversations, and try to like develop and kind of reach a resolution or some kind of change in their character, or coming to an understanding. That's something I often try to like maneuver conversations toward when we get to the end of the game. So the later stages, I know that's not always going to happen. Leviathan is not going to make those concessions necessarily, as much as you might try. But definitely try to do that at least some of the time. You don't have to do it all the time, but it can go a long way to occasionally have that moment in there. Also, shame on you. You've got your chart here. You've got your table to keep it organized. But you know what? Oh, you're further along than I thought. God damn.
I was trying something a little...
They're not talking to themselves. You're telling me you can't have some Bobobo on Bobobo action?
He already does that pretty extensively.
Okay. What about everybody else?
Hasn't been my concern, but maybe one day I'll go back and fill those in with check marks.
I did have to write full conversations for my girls to themselves as part of Arndress's dialogue marathon.
That is why Bo has that, because of that event.
He exerted his will upon all of us. Any final comments on Nephenee, the country beauty? Emphasis on cunt? Not really. I just wanted to say that. She's not a cunt. She's very nice.
Helmet.
Yeah, Helmet's pretty good. I love Helmet. I cannot stress to you how much I love Helmet. When I play Final Fantasy 14, when I'm getting glamour for my characters, it's very important that they have a good helmet or kind of a face head covering. That's like my whole aesthetic is like I want to put a helmet on it. It needs to have a helmet. When it doesn't have a helmet and it feels like it should have a helmet, I'm like, gotta have a helmet. And if it shouldn't have a helmet, but it does, I'm like, yeah, that punched it up. That's good. I like that. So yeah, Helmet's great. I love Helmet.
I bet she gives great Helmet.
I was wondering if I was going to say that.
All right. That concludes a pretty lengthy discussion, actually, of the two main roster characters. But we love having you on and talking about your stuff. And they're some of the best projects in the game, so everyone should take a look at them. Moving on now to the test roster, the main events, you could say. Brand new characters that you've had, this pair of characters. I don't know. Maybe I'll just cover it. Yeah, I'll cover it in for the final slot here, what I think the theming was on this one. But the two characters are Aoi Inuyama from Yuru Camp and Carmine, no last name given. I don't think. They tend not to in Pokemon, from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and not just Scarlet and Violet, but like the teal, what is it, the Indigo Disc DLC, the last one. No, they were in the teal mask, right? They were,
Yeah, both, yeah.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I think both pieces of DLC were kind of like about them. I didn't really play with them, but we'll talk about Aoi Inuyama first from Eurocamp. I don't know if anyone expected a franchise mate for Nadeshiko Kagamihara, the camping obsessed girl that we covered quite a while ago. I think like episode 77 or something. She when she first came on, she has taken, I don't know about the game quite by storm. Players generally like her, but not to a huge extent. But devs have really gone nuts for her. Nord, you would know all about that, and nuts related, because you had your dollies mushed together and make out with Nadeshiko, and she now has a friend with her. There were a number of devs that kind of got into Eurocamp because of Nadeshiko, but she had a whole group of friends, and Aoi Inuyama was not one that I think I really heard people talk about. I don't know what her role is in the friend group exactly. I will let you explain, but it's a camp girls doing camp things anime, basically, is my understanding. They go camping mostly in safe public parks and eat ramen noodles and generally have a good time. I don't think there's an episode where any of them get mauled by a bear or related mayhem. Aoi, whose name translates to Blue Dog Mountain. I don't know if that gets involved in the story. She's apparently good at cooking. She is a student. I don't know if you aged her up at all, but she's studying to become a teacher, which is a bit redundant if you think about it. Before I embarrass myself any further with my lack of knowledge, I'm just going to let you explain and fill in the blanks here. Why this character and what is her deal? And what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah. So, I believe you said earlier, like
how much of that was accurate?
Yeah, I believe you said earlier, who could have seen this coming, and you also said earlier, like, do your dual releases have a theme? And the theme this time around is characters that other people goaded me into creating. And Aoi was, you can thank Tweetsy for putting worms in my ears and compelling me to do this. He knew I had an interest in her, and he knew I had watched Eurocamp. So he's like, maybe you want to do this. Maybe this would be cool. And Tweetsy's so nice that I have trouble saying no to him. So here we are, and Aoi shot up my list of priorities pretty quickly, and that brings us to today. Her role in Eurocamp is she's one of the founding members, like the co-president of the Outdoor Activities Club, which is the de facto club full of girls camping in Eurocamp. And due to where Tweetsy put Nadeshiko in the in SPNatI, how he kind of configured how old she was and what was going on, Aoi is aged up a bit, and we looked to the air quotes non-canon movie for what possible future she's involved in. And in the movie, she is a full-fledged teacher, and that's part of the plot. So in SPNatI, she's not a teacher quite yet. She's almost there. She's getting there. She's working on it. So her kind of role in the group is she's a bit of a free spirit, a prankster, but she also has to be the voice of reason sometimes, because Nadeshiko will just run off on her own with no self-control, and their other friends is a bit of a scatterbrain and needs reeling in. But Aoi's a lot of fun, and I really like her a lot. So here she is in all her glory. She is the dog girl. That definitely comes up. And she's also my second character who lies compulsively and has a pretty big tell, which is always a lot of fun. And there's already some target stuff being set up where she's completely selling people bills of bad goods, and it's fantastic.
Nord, what'd you think of Aoi Inuyama?
Oh my goodness, I hated her. She was so terrible.
Nord, this is voice chat. We can't see you doing the face.
Solitaire, include the gif of her doing her compulsive liar face. Okay. You can't just make a character this smug, this cute, this much of an outright liar. Also have her be sexy as hell. And yet you've done it. Good job. Really good art. You did all the art yourself, didn't you? I think for all of these you've done all the art. Oh boy. You've done a really good job with her in particular. Yes, I am one of the developers who is one of the just community members who was enraptured with her. You did a great job with her posing, although she does seem to use... She has two poses where she has her hands up in the sort of like jazz hands style, but one of them she uses a lot more than any other pose. And maybe that's just a consequence of what she was saying. I'm not even sure what the pose name was.
I think you're talking about Mischief.
Yep, that'd do it. Yeah, Mischief. She has a great looking chest in her bra stage and her completely topless stage, so well done with that. I wish she would do more of her, like, squishing them together sort of poses, because it looks really good. Really activates my almonds, if you know what I mean. No, you don't. Nobody does. The thing about making a character who has one singular franchise is that it always feels like not necessarily a tough act to follow all the time, but you want to make sure your character both feels like they're from the same universe while also feeling different enough to justify them being there. I think you did a great job with that with Aoi. I started watching Yuru Camp. I've not yet made it to any point where she appears in. I only watched the first couple of episodes, and that was on a plane, and I was getting a headache from the flight, so I stopped and never picked it up again. I should get back to it. But, yeah, great first impression. Where do you feel like taking her from here?
Thinking that...
Camping?
Yeah, well, yeah, probably. Basically just, kind of a holding pattern as I figure out which moors I should moor and which other kind of additional directions I should go. I want to finish up targeted conversations with her, make sure she has enough lines and situations where, she needs them. And that's all still stuff I'm compiling at the moment, so very much a work in progress. No huge, big plans like costumes or epilogues until she's on the main roster. So yeah, right now, just trying to make sure that, she is functional is my main thing. And making sure that whatever trouble Nadeshiko gets into, Aoi can, stand there and be like, you're having sex with my best friend.
Is she a pretty major character?
Yes, she is.
Let's see. The Flesh Fang takes some getting used to. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, if it was some kind of birth defect or just an art quirk. You never know with these anime designs sometimes. It almost made me feel like she had like a cleft lip. But I think in the end, it accentuated her expressions quite well. I was worried that it might kind of compromise some of them, but I think it gets across her general demeanor, at least when she's being sincere, which is not always. But it's kind of nice in the same way, because she is a pretty embarrassed character in a lot of ways, but at the same time, she's willing to joke, she's willing to tell tall tales and have fun and do the little grabby hand sometimes and get into it. Let's see. Just looking for specific writing notes here. She did have quite the bad poker face, especially next to Kyoko, who I was playing with her Christmas costume. We'll talk about next time, because Kyoko legit fucks you up. She switches whether she's bluffing or not, just based on the line. And then you got Aoi, who has the most obvious tell in the world. She feels very normal in a lot of ways. She almost has like a girl next door kind of vibe to her a lot of the time, where she's kind of playful, but when things get hot and heavy and serious, she does kind of have some apprehension, even though she ultimately goes through with it. I noticed she was quite horny for men, and with an attitude that I think is surprisingly rare, which there are girls that get horny for men, but it's almost like in an antagonistic way, or like a male stripper kind of way, where she catcalls you or really wants to kind of get one over on you. And there were even some lines with Maya that have not been fully developed at this point, where she does kind of almost have a chip on her shoulder about men a little bit, and she kind of enjoys having a bit of power over them. I don't know if you can go into that, if that's a thing from the show, if she was mistreated by a man or what.
There's almost no male characters in your camp. This might be just something
maybe it's a genre thing.
I'm just manifesting this unawares of anything.
They just inherently hate men and want them out of the picture in these cute girl shows. Well, aside from that, I think it's pretty interesting and unique if you want to just keep going for it. I didn't realize when it was unconscious, but you could definitely make it a more conscious thing. There was relatively little about camping, surprisingly. Maybe I'm just comparing to Nadeshiko, who we kind of complained never stopped talking about camping a lot of the time. Aoi did not have a lot to offer about that unprompted. It's obviously something you can get into with targets, but I wouldn't know it was a big part of her spare time. And the same is true of teaching, actually, as well. Just sort of the general affect she had was kind of teacherly sometimes, in terms of encouraging people or being encouraging. But she didn't talk about her studies very much, or why she wanted to be a teacher or anything. There was a bit of the trope of the single teacher, like the old maid that you have in or the irresponsible type, who's trying to recapture her teenage years. You see that a lot in anime, where she almost feels like one of the students. I don't know if that's an element in your camp at all, since you said you had to age her up.
Yeah, no. So I did have this a lot of this is kind of just flickers of inspiration, where it's there is definitely that trope where it's the teacher who's terminally single, and Aoi's trying to maybe try to not become that person, is making conscious choices how do I not do that? How do I not become that? And there's definitely a character in your camp who's this teacher who has a hilarious drinking problem. So she definitely has examples of adults in her life who are teachers who don't quite have their life together. And Aoi is as a student, definitely had her life together and knew what she was about. Only nearly died that one time. So it's how do I keep it together going forward? And there's just these tiny little things about her character where you can almost see the phrase that are developing, and you can feel oh, she sees them too, and she's trying to get a handle on that a little bit.
Was I wrong? Does she get mauled by a bear?
It's not a bear. It's a lot more. It's much more mundane danger she almost gets into.
I guess we'll leave that for fans to take a look.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for Nord. He's still on episode, I imagine, 2.
Episode 4, actually.
You're almost there.
Jeez, that's further than he made it into Gandren.
You're almost about to be Aoi, and then pretty much the very next episode, you're going to meet her boobs, and that's fantastic.
Sometimes I'm down on Tweetsy, but he's managed to do something that I never have, which is inspire someone to make a franchise mate for one of his girls. In fact, he's done that with Hatsune Miku as well. So I'm just a piece of shit. What do I know?
He asked very, very nicely.
I never did that. I've just left it on the table. I mean, people have made plenty of models, but they haven't written anything. Let's see. Thank you for those models, by the way. Couple of quick notes about the art. Again, I'd have to echo Nord. Very appealing and heavy shape to the boobs. God, I feel like everyone really stepped up their custom boob game right after I finished the Maya and Jura art updates. I feel like I would have taken examples from a lot of these. They probably could have used like some actual outlines on their nipples and things. And other stuff I see all the time. But yeah, they kind of go out to the sides a little bit, but they feel heavy and teardrop shaped. And she's got a good squish and they get manipulated. Very nice boobs. Curious O face is the other thing I wrote down. It kind of looks like she bit into a lemon. She's doing a bit of like the shrunken, like the lemon drop meme that went around a while back. Her face kind of shrinks up. It's just funny looking. Well, on the whole, though, very nice character. Is there anything? Oh yeah, the chair she shit. Oh god, there we go again. The chair
You're obsessed with it this episode. God damn.
That was just one of the tongue twisters we were doing earlier when we were recording. The chair she sits in needs more shading. That's the one thing I wanted to add. But is there anything you want to add as we conclude on Aoi?
It needs more shading? God, okay.
Or like some kind of deformation, something to show the weight.
Okay. I'm writing "fit in the chair."
No. I must say, I too have struggled with a posable dress, the hems as well. I don't know if you did, but there are just kind of like some bumps in there. Not easy to deal with.
Yeah, I've done what I can. I'm thinking about revisiting that, trying to smooth them all out. It was definitely very much me trying to kind of come up with a modular solution rather than just brute forcing it for every pose, which inevitably is what it always becomes for me when these things happen. But when you're initially setting up all the poses, you don't want to be bogged down by like, I gotta fix the dress and all these poses. But once you've got all the poses and they're all made, it's like, yeah, I can go back and make a custom skirt bottom for all of them. That's no problem. So it's definitely a product. They're very much a product of that. So if it continues to bug me, it'll definitely get revisited. But I do also like that it kind of like has some movement to it, some life to it. So I might work in his favor, but it's something I'll have to finagle with. But definitely, it's kind of on my radar already. Her finishing face, I also kind of would agree that I'm not entirely satisfied with it. I was waiting on some feedback. I was going for kind of a clenched, a sort of reserved, or not reserved, kind of a held back. I don't know if it reads quite as well as I'd liked it to, so I might just revisit that and go a different direction with it.
Maybe it's the flesh fang. Maybe it's the eyebrows being up too high, so everything else looks shrunken. Maybe they kind of look like eye bags. I think that's supposed to be her blushing.
Perhaps. Yeah, there's a lot that's not kind of working in her favor.
I just thought it was funny mostly.
But yeah, I might need to revisit that to find a better reference. But yeah, doing her facial posing was fun. Definitely a challenge for me. Her eyebrows are completely custom. They're made entirely out of face marks and exist on the top layer of our reality. And the flesh fang, I was like, how do I? Because a lot of times I'll show the teeth in poses, kind of custom, and I lean on that a lot. I find it works well. But I can't do that with Aoi because I checked, I scoured to find out like how do they handle the situations, and you just never see her teeth. You only see her flesh fang. That is her only tooth. Other Eurocamp characters have teeth, and you see them, but not Aoi. Because because they gave her a flesh fang, and they're like, I guess we're married to this now. And so I kept things consistent with that. I didn't cheat. I was like, okay, that means I am also married to the flesh fang. And I think it punches up a lot of her expressions. It makes them very like her, very, very Aoi distinct. So I had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, it definitely presented a different sort of challenge to putting it all together.
But when I see her in the show, I'm never going to be able to unnotice that now.
Welcome to my reality.
Are you two ready to move on?
Yeah, well, no. I wanted to shout out the afterglow pose for being just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely incredible. Like what you did with her posing in general for sitting in the chair. Okay, that's be done.
Chairs are nice. I want to do more chairs. Problem is, I have to make.
Do you want to go even further out into the wilderness? Also now known as America or America Adjacent, because that's where the Scarlet and Violet Pokemon DLC apparently takes you. All the way so you can get greeted by a Pokemon trainer known as Carmine, who is a bitch. Why don't you explain? Just kidding. I didn't play this game.
You didn't play Scarlet and Violet?
No. I watched Worcester play it and I was like, well, that don't look good.
I played Scarlet and Violet.
But I'm not here to criticize the game, only the character that it produced.
Cool. Yeah. So this, I think Carmine, as far as, when this.
Oh, is that how you say it?
I think so. That's how you say the word Carmine. The color.
I blew it.
The Batman villain. But yeah, I think as far as characters who, when they were created and entered the global consciousness, Carmine is my most recent character of all of them. I think beforehand it was actually Stola, which is sad because she's like from, I want to say 2013. But yeah, Carmine is. I'm up here in the 20s, in the roaring 20s. Look at me. I'm a modern boy with modern sensibilities. But yeah, Carmine comes to us express from the Pokemon Company, from the 2 DLC stories in Scarlet and Violet. And maybe you didn't play Scarlet and Violet because you saw the screen recordings of pretty a lot of jank, and it is kind of a janky game. I'm not gonna lie. But I love Pokemon to an unreasonable degree, so I am one of those idiots who keeps giving them money, even though they keep making kind of not great games. But it's still Pokemon, and it's like the game didn't work. The game worked, so I played it, and I had fun, and that's all that mattered to me. But in the DLC, you meet Carmine. She is immediately antagonistic towards you. You show up in her hometown, and she tells you to get out. And that's basically her character in a nutshell. Is she's got a lot of pride, especially about who she is, where she comes from, her appearance, and she isn't afraid to put it on the line and put you down because of it. But of course, because you are the protagonist and you've got your level 100 EV trained Charizard, her little level 14 Poochyena doesn't stand a chance against you and your power. So, yeah, she forms kind of a tenuous friendship with you. She really wants you to be friends with her little brother, Kyrian, who has major self-esteem issues. Whereas Carmine, her problem is she doesn't have enough self-esteem issues. But yeah, story progresses. You get closer to her. Her brother turns out to be kind of an asshole. And Carmine turns out to be kind of not maybe an asshole. She's got a heart of gold down there somewhere, deep down, once you get to know her. But you have a whole thing. You find out that the whole town's life is a lie. You go fight a turtle. Yeah, that's basically how it goes.
Yeah, that was my takeaway, just seeing clips, actually. I totally missed the part where she was a bitch. I didn't know that. I thought she was pretty cool, almost like too chill, and then like her brother was a total bitch in like a dweeb, and then later kind of edgy school shooter kind of way. It's very uncomfortable. by the end from what I saw.
Carmine's a tsundere. She warms up to you over time, because she's just full of conceit and distrust of strangers. But then you become not a stranger, so it's just like, okay, I guess you're cool, and you were nice to Kyrian, even though I'm never nice to Kyrian. But yeah, Kyrian is like he really is into this Pokemon Ogerpon and wants to be its friend, but Ogerpon likes you because you're the best. You're the main character. And he kind of gets a little too upset about that. And Carmine is a little too like, he'll be fine about it. And he basically takes over the school, and Carmine comes back and he calls you, and she's like, hey, my brother needs to be taken down a peg or two. What do you say?
This is kind of veering into non-SPNatI territory. We're just going to get into criticizing the story of the game itself, but like, how does this relate to SPNatI? Like, what do you want to do with her? Like, how did you want to like express her character arc in the story or in SPNatI?
Yeah, of course.
And like, other things related to her development.
Yeah, so Carmine, conceited, thinks she's better than you, even though she just met you. So, she, to a lot of the people in SPNatI, she's pretty antagonistic. She does not take losing very well. At first, she warms up to it a little bit. But she's also got a lot of hometown pride, and that's all wrapped up in this legend, the Loyal Three. So she's got some hometown memorabilia that she's sporting, but she's embarrassed by it because now she knows the truth about all that. Not spoiling anything. So she realizes the underwear she threw on this morning isn't very representative of her current views, and that makes her angry. So she does a little football spike right now during her stripping phase. So yeah, so she definitely takes criticism not very well, but she takes flattery incredibly well. She becomes completely disarmed if anyone says anything nice about her. She loves it, especially about her appearance. She's a little shallow in that regard. And she's also a little embarrassed because she has a bit of a messy forfeit, and she knows it. But she's not afraid of her, she's not afraid to say, like, I'm hot shit, and I don't care if you don't agree. So another one of my kind of mean girl, conceited, feels satisfying when they lose sort of characters, I think.
Anything else you want to include in the preamble, or should we just pass on to Nord?
I think I'm all preambled out.
Well, Nord?
Something I did notice is that she comes across as being another girl, like, on very first initial impression, but then I actually paying attention to her dialogue, I realized quickly that, like, she's really sarcastic and self-centered, but it didn't really come across as being actually mean-spirited, except to herself. Like, this great animated sequence where she throws her themed undergarments on the ground. Loved it the first time I saw it, and loved it seeing it again.
Apparently it's a game reference based on this GIF, because she does the whole, like, vibrating with anger thing with her arms. I'm going to assume she also spikes something down at some point in the game. Does that happen? Or only this part?
Only the shaking with anger.
I thought this might have been like her losing animation. She like throws a Pokeball down on the ground or something.
She gets kind of sad when you beat her.
I see. Well, Nord, continue.
I mean, to be fair, wouldn't you be sad if you're just like, hey, could you be friends with my brother? And they hit you with a max EV fire blast or something? Speaking as someone who wrote multiple Pokemon characters as well, you did a great approach of how I take this approach with writing Pokemon characters as well, where it's like, obviously they talk about Pokemon related concepts, but you also remember that this is still a character that it's mundane to them, and so they wouldn't, when you're not having to provide position to a player protagonist, the character is still just like living in the Pokemon world and it would be mundane to them. My point being, she has more going on than just, oh, here's my Pokemon team, I'll describe it at length. In her interaction with Aoi, in fact, she like casually mentions something Pokemon related. I forget what exactly, but I know that like Aoi's response capitalizes on the fact that there's a lot more interesting stuff going on in the topic than just, oh, Pokemon are a thing. I remember what it was. It's that, isn't the DLC area basically like a artificial island off the coast of Unova?
Yeah, Blueberry Academy is this big biodome under the water.
Yeah. And that was definitely worth mentioning.
Just a flex
So I think
under the water.
But yeah, it shows that even if you're writing a Pokemon character, a character usually has a lot more going on than just, haha, I have a Pokemon team. Now, on the opposite side of things for me to mention, she's a squirter, and that's very hot. Good job with all of her posing in the forfeit, and in general, all of her posing is very good. Has a lot of personality and expressiveness to it. How did you handle her putting her hair back? Like, what's the conditions for that?
The conditions, and at the moment, as of this recording, the conditions are a little broken. They don't quite work because I accidentally broke them. They worked perfectly, but I broke them. But I fixed them. They should, maybe by the time this podcast comes out, it's all good and no one knows that I fucked it up. But I did. And the conditions are based on the poses she uses. She has currently 3. I am working on a 4th, actually. Or 2 of them, are her bringing her hair forward. One where she's huddling behind her hair and she's kind of hiding. And another one where she's actually is her butt pose, where she turns around and she's fixing her hair while you can't look at her boobs. And these, whenever she uses poses, it puts her in a state where all of her poses go to her having her hair in front. And then she has one pose where she's very like conceitedly pushing her hair back, and this will cause it so all of her poses have her hair behind her head. And there's not, in the game, all her hair is always in front of her all the time, at all times, because, Pokemon's not concerned about showing us her boobs. So, this is very much something that I was talking to, If I May, about, who is the guy who put a worm in my ear about Carmine. So, if you like Carmine, make sure to hit If I May with a, thanks, bro, let me give you a kiss, in his DMs. So it's all based on poses. I need to add another one that puts her hair behind her, because I feel like that's the one, that's one everyone wants. And I also need to give her, it's funny you mentioned posing. I totally blanked on giving her another like angry pose. She only has one angry pose and she gets angry a lot. So she needs another angry pose, and it's going to be a pose that puts her hair behind her. So it will probably fire fairly frequently. So enjoy that. I'm working on it. It's on my list of things to do. But like I said, it's totally based on what poses she uses. If she does a pose or she's putting it behind her, it should stay behind her. If she does a pose where she's putting it in front of her, it should stay in front of her.
That answers my question, which is why do all of her poses have pose sets? Now I know. I will say Godiva hair, pretty good taste. That's one of my notes. Godiva hair equals taste. I like that. If you don't know, that's when hair covers bare breasts. Not that she has really breasts to speak of, but they are quite cute. Gotta echo the droplets thing as well. Or Nord said squirter. I mean, people kind of feel iffy about squirting a lot of time, especially if you describe it as squirting. You get into a classic Discord debate about the female ejaculation and the existence thereof.
Listen, it's magical fluid. No one knows where it comes from.
Well, Hex would just insist that it's pee every time you bring it up. But let's see. I mean, I think the approach here is actually what people should do. If you're into that kind of thing, it's more like droplets, it looks like. So if you want to interpret it that way, you can. But you could also just interpret it as like them being really wet. Of course, in the afterglow pose you see here, it's also quite sticky, and there's strands everywhere, which is pretty appealing in its own way. So nice job there. I mean, in terms of like other comments on art, I think you have a real talent for you do great expressions without going crazy. Maybe it's just like you make all their faces really accurate and unique looking. That's something you've always been good at. Like, she looks very pretty. Maybe, I mean, part of that is the character design. You got the eyelash meta I wrote down. She has a lot of like really big prominent eyelashes, and that makes her look pretty, which helps because she has the dumbest fucking haircut I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And there's a lot in the record, or in the running, especially in Scarlet and Violet, from what I've seen. All these characters, they look ridiculous. It's like a damn circus, the whole region. If you just cut her bangs to something more reasonable, she'd be super cute and pretty. But instead, she's just kind of cute and pretty, and that's all I can give her for now. All these characters need a haircut. On the whole, though, I really I liked her art quite a lot. It was very appealing. Which is good, because you definitely want to get her naked, because she's very antagonistic and self-centered. I mean, I like the slender types. I like the skin tight clothing, relatively skin tight. You know, it's pretty tight against her body, and it's just it's pretty appealing overall. Now, writing related, my guess for the oh yeah. Nord posted the butt pose. I forgot to mention that. Again, for all four of these characters, I wrote no butt. Maybe I did see the butt pose, but it didn't leave a strong impression on me, so you got to fix that. You got to draw those profiles like you did with like Sophia and Yai. If I don't remember the butt, it doesn't exist. Writing related, my guess for the theme for these two was going to be the bad poker face update. They both have some very obvious tells, and Carmine in particular, really falls apart, really falls to pieces about halfway through the game, and just loses her composure more and more. So it's always very clear what kind of hand she has and how far along you are on beating her. And of course, Aoi has a pretty big tell as well. Of course, they have very different attitudes towards the game and Poker Face in general. Aoi kind of takes everything in stride, and Carmine very much does not. She is not okay with losing, although ultimately she seems cool with it. I checked her AI. It's about what I expected, which she starts good, and then she goes to average halfway through. It's the classic collapse character I referred to as a kind of like... I sort of accidentally killed the rework for the art update for Faye Valentine back in the day, because I criticized her old writing that she still had as being a classic collapse character, where she's very focused on the game the whole time and winning the game, and is full of herself. But as she loses layers, she falls apart, and she goes through the 5 stages of grief. Basically, as she loses her layers. That's not bad on its own, but it leads to the problem of like she's very game focused. And when you're focused on the game, the thing is that all the cases in the character editor are based on like who's revealing what and who lost and what kind of hand you have. And it means it's very easy to fall down that rabbit hole where she doesn't talk about very much besides who's winning and who's losing. And that gets very dull. She does not talk about Pokemon very much or her setting. I didn't learn very much about her other than that she was a bitch, which I probably should have known beforehand, but I did not. So all I knew that she was a bitch, and I didn't really learn about anything else going on in her life. I guess targets can fix that. But yeah, it was really just, I'm great and I'm going to win this game. Oh shit, I guess I'm not great. I guess I'm not going to win this game. And that was about it. The sexuality was vague as well. I mean, she had a lot of appealing kind of individual lines and poses, but it just didn't really come together for me. her sexuality felt vague. It felt, because kind of as a result of that limited focus, I didn't really know what she was into in particular. She just was like, oh, I don't want to focus on her. I want to focus on myself. Maybe you could adapt some of that competitiveness that she has towards sexuality. Once she just admits that she's lost and she's like, okay, you're cool. Okay. I want you to do me. Something like that. I mean, her confidence is pretty sexy, but of course she loses that confidence by the end. And because her AI gets worse, as happens with collapsed characters, she spends less time relatively in the stages that you want to see. It is, I kind of got the golden or kind of intended experience where she kind of beat me early on, and then she actually ended up being the first to lose despite having a string of early wins. So we kind of clawed our way back. So I mean, it was pretty satisfying to beat her, but I would have liked to see her in those later stages of a little bit more, because she is, again, quite pretty. So I think you just need to expand her scope. What's there is good, but it's so limited that it's kind of hard to enjoy on any level other than the visual. So now that I've ruined your day, what do you think?
Oh no, I'm writing all this down. This is good stuff. No, I definitely feel that. I think that's a pitfall that I had in mind, but I am where I may have accidentally stepped in it.
I mean, it happened to me with Maya. Even I had to pivot away from that because, she's competitive in Pokemon, but this isn't Pokemon. She just keeps insisting that it's like skill based. It's like, no, it's not, bitch. You're dumb.
I think you definitely, there's definitely a couple of nuggets in there that are like, oh yeah, I can definitely do something with that. So definitely, I think my plan going forward would be not to plaster over what's already there, but make sure there's enough stuff that's different from that to pad it out, where it's like she can still be competitive and not wanting to lose, but also at the same time talking about maybe bring up Pokemon a little bit, big setting a little bit, make sure that competitiveness bleeds into kind of flirtation and sexuality a little bit, because that should definitely be a component of it. Carmine definitely is a top.
I mean, yeah, like you said, she's hot and she knows it, and that's appealing in its own way. But you got to do a little bit more with that.
Yeah,
and not just like,
right.
I beat you with cards. The cards are just a pretense.
Indeed. So yeah,
it is definitely one of those things you can fix it better by just adding more rather than changing what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Couple extra little notes. Masturbation lines, more breathing, more silence, more onomatopoeia, more italics. I think you could use italics a lot more, and that would help. And especially, I think this is something everyone could do a little bit more of. General player-directed lines. If they're just standing there and they've won the game, the player does tend to win. So you don't want to completely ignore them just because there's someone else masturbating next to them. You could have some lines directed at the player. I think those are all my notes, though. If you want to say, if you want to continue with your final thoughts going forward on her.
Yeah, all good notes. Definitely, that's why I come here and why I listen to the podcast when I'm not on it, is to get feedback on stuff and to listen to feedback and get ideas about what to do. Because I guess, it's strange to think, but my biggest struggle is always, what more I should do. Because I have a general idea of what on a kind of basic level I should do, but sometimes it's like, what more should I do? What else needs to happen? I always kind of run up against a wall, and that's where you guys and all the feedback comes in handy. But last thoughts with Carmine are there's a lot on my mind with Carmine that I'm thinking about doing going forward. There is a fire in me about making a new epilogue soon, and Carmine might play a role in that. Mysterious thing to say on my part. That's what I have in my notes here. It's mysterious to say this. I like being mysterious. Look forward to kind of more in-depth interactions. Carmine is basically a piece of a puzzle that I've been waiting to kind of launch I was going to wait longer, but of course, like I said, if I may put a bug in my ear, and here she is now. So things are accelerating. But I'm trying to get my house in order so I can do that and have it be good for y'all. It should be exciting. So if you like Carmine and and you weren't put off by mole gates, yeah. Look forward to that.
Do we want to mention that?
We don't need to get into it.
Just know that not everyone on Reddit thinks that beauty marks should be referred to as such.
I say give characters more moles.
I really want to thank you for coming on, Just Kidding, and for all you've contributed to the game and your fast and efficient pace of doing so. Now, sure to be even more so that you can merge your own stuff. I'm excited for you, and I wasn't immediately sold on these 2 character picks, but I knew that you always do a good job, and that there would be something to look forward to regardless of who you make. So thanks for coming on to explain all this, and I know you'll take good notes and make good improvements, and of course they're very good to start with. Definitely high tier already. So
the most menacing thing about this is that in the screenshot he shared showing his banter between all of his characters, there's another barely cropped into frame additional character after Carmine.
Are you surprised? Did you not know how this goes?
No, but it just shows that his power is just barely restrained by the 2 characters on testing rule.
I'm sure he's cooking up another 2 right now, and we should probably let him get to it unless either of you have any final thoughts as we close out.
Well, I'll just want to say thanks for having me on again, and I hope to deliver even more characters to you that make you say, "What is this? Why have you done this?" But later you're sold on. That's my brand, is things that you didn't know you wanted.
I look forward to it.
Nord, anything from you?
No, nothing from me. Just I'm envious of your word got away from me. Your stamina, your endurance.
Well, you can think on that for a minute. Yeah. I mean, it was a great episode. Sorry I mentioned shit so much. I don't know. Just Kidding started it, okay? I don't know why he brought that up in reference to a robot of all things. My brain's just working on that. Like, what kind of sense does that make?
Robot, more like robot. Am I right, fellas?
Yeah. If only you left it at that.
Didn't mean to have you in arrears. Am I right, fellas?
Nord, have you gotten back your train of thought, or did that ruin it completely?
No, because he keeps butting in.
Am I right, fellas?
She has a really good looking... Oh, I think my Discord has died.
Hello? I can hear you.
Yep, there we go.
We can hear you.
My Discord died for a bit. Great. She has a great looking...
She has a great looking Discord death.
I swear this isn't a bit. 1 second.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I can finish the thought for you if you'd like. She has a great looking ass, or at least maybe she does. I don't know. Does she have a butt pose? I didn't see it.
How did you not see it?
How did you not see it?
It's one of the ones that is guaranteed.
It's guaranteed twice. You see it twice, provided you win.
Oh. Maybe I did see it. Okay, maybe I saw the panty one. That doesn't count, though. It's got to be a bare butt.
Okay, I don't know how much of that is getting...
Not bear like shits in the woods bear like Aoi, who presumably does not. Actually, maybe she does.
You're obsessed with this today, aren't you?
Well, Nord, are you back?
I'm back. She has a great looking chest in her bra stage and her